Peace be with you. The Arabic word sunnah is familiar to most Muslims, whether they speak Arabic or not. They will generally associate it with Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So you will hear them say that we have to follow the sunnah of the messenger. What they are saying is that we have to follow the way or the tradition of the messenger. However, what I want to do today is explain how this word is used by God in the Quran to warn us about what the Sunnah of God is, what the way of God is, so we may understand the Quran in its entirety. In the 35th chapter of the Quran, verse 43, it says, behaving proudly in the land and in planning evil. So he's describing some people, right? And the evil plans will not beset any except the authors of it. And then the most important part, then should they wait for anything except the way of the former people, the Sunnah of the former people, what happened to the former people. For you will not find any alteration in the course of God, in the Sunnah of Allah, right? God says you will not find any change in my way on how I do things, and you will not find any change in the course of God. This is what this verse is saying. And it's putting it in the context of the former people. Then it says, then should they wait for anything except the Sunnah, the way of the former people, what happened to them. And if you read the Quran, you will see that this is frequently repeated. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because half of the Quran is the stories of former people and what they did. And we need to understand that this is an example. The Sunnah of God does not change. So these people are an example. Their stories are not there for no reason. And these stories are not there just to tell us about them. It is to warn us. So I'll just read a few verses to talk about this. For example, in the 3rd chapter of the Quran, verse 137, God tells us, indeed, there have been examples before you, therefore travel in the earth and see what was the end of the rejectors. So this is a precedent. Precedent just simply is an earlier event or action that is regarded as an example. And it is meant to guide us when we find ourselves in similar circumstances. Or in the 14th chapter of the Quran, verse 9, God tells us, did not news come to you of those before you, the people of Noah, and Ad, and Thamud, and those after them whom none know except God. Their messengers came to them with clarity, but they placed their hands into their mouths and they said, we are rejecting what you have been sent with, and we are in doubt as to what you are inviting us to. Listen, you have to understand that God sent down laws, not religions. This is what people may confused. Your purpose, our purpose is not to form an organization. Our purpose is to follow the laws individually, and if we follow the laws individually, our societies are going to be godly laws, godly societies. So when the messengers came down with the most basic concepts, if we make violation of those basic concepts into a religion and say, yeah, you can still be a Muslim or you can still be a Christian if you are doing these things that God forbade or violating the 10 Commandments, then there is no point to any of this. You can have religions that number billions of people and they're all going to hell because they are disobeying God. God tells us God's Sunnah does not change. In the 9th chapter of the Quran, verse 70, God tells us, has not the news of those before them come to them? Of the people of Noah and Ad and Thamud and the people of Abraham and the inhabitants of Midian and the overthrown cities? Their messengers came to them with clear arguments, so it was not God who did them injustice, but they were unjust to themselves. Or in the 24th chapter of the Quran, verse 34, God says, and certainly we have sent to you clear communications and a description of those who have passed away before you, and a warning to those who are careful of their duty, the muttaqeen. These are precedents. So the muttaqeen, people who are careful of their duty to God, are supposed to be warned by these stories. So when you read the Quran, when you read about these people, you have to figure out what they did. And although this is talking about them on a societal level, you have to understand that societies are comprised of individuals, which means that most individuals in those societies, except the people who were saved, were participating in that stuff. For example, the people of Midian were mutaffifin. People of Lut committed fawahisha. So mutaffifin are people who cheat in business. Fawahisha is in the Quran refers to either zina or homosexuality or anything like that, right? Or people of the Pharaoh. God tells us in the 43rd chapter of the Quran, verse 56, and we have made them which is talking about people of the Pharaoh, a precedent and an example to the latter generations. This is talking about political circumstances. It talks about the Pharaoh and his generals and his sorcerers led people into committing all kinds of abominations. So he's telling us, do not succumb to political pressures of your leaders to disobey God. This is an example, because God tells us that people who follow the Pharaoh in doing these evil things, they themselves ended up in hell. And they're going to be like, hey, we followed you, can you help us? And they won't be able to get any help. This is what the Quran teaches us. In the 54th chapter of the Quran, verses 51 through 53, God tells us, and certainly we have already destroyed the likes of you, people like you. We're not the first generation. But is there anyone who will mind? Like, are you going to think about this thing? That people like you were already destroyed. And everything they have done is in the writings. And everything small and great is written down. History is cyclical. Every generation gets the same test, and every generation gets the same punishment. Every judgment. The Sunnah of Allah, the Sunnah of God, the way of God does not change. And if you are a Muslim, that is a basic fact that you have to understand. Nothing new was brought. Nothing new was brought. Every messenger brought the same thing, and it says, this is what God wants from you, obey or else. There are the consequences. And what we are asked to do is goodness. So whether you call yourself a Muslim or a Christian, the Bible says the same thing. Either you walk the walk or expect the fire. So whether you're flying in a car or whether you're riding on a donkey, the play always stays the same. The Sunnah of God does not change. The stage changes, but what we are expected to do never changes. And this is what the Quran teaches us. Peace be with you.